Kelsey Cooper, aka The Social Broker, and welcome to another episode of Reverse Ambition, a podcast that features people that put it all on the line to follow their dreams and passion. I have my good friend, Miss Renae Bluitt, founder of Inner Shoes blog, as well as she's a creator and executive producer of She Did That. I'm gonna let her explain what that is. Renae, welcome.
Hey, Kelsey.
Welcome, Miss Renae Bluitt. What up, girl?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited about this.
Man, listen, I am super excited to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on Reverse Ambition. This is the beginning of an amazing podcast that features dynamic people who really follow their passion and dreams. And you were one of the first person I thought of having on here. So really appreciate you, girl.
Thank you. What an honor.
So let's get this started. So, my first question usually is, walk me through your journey in terms of where you went to school, what you majored in, and so forth. And, we go from there.
Okay. Well, I am a Midwestern girl, born and raised in the Midwest between Indiana and Illinois.
Okay.
I went to Illinois State University. I majored in speech communication. When I graduated, I really was not clear on what I wanted to do. I really think it's just unrealistic to expect people at that age to know what they want to do for a career.
Right.
Some people do, but I didn't. Thought that I wanted to get into advertising, but my parents gave me a quick reality check when they said that they would not be financing any more schooling. So I moved to Chicago. And I did get in the advertising industry. I worked for the Chicago Advertising Federation, which is a nonprofit there in the city that supports the ad industry there, planned events, wrote for their newsletter, just did a lot of kind of administrative stuff, but learned a lot about the ins and outs of event planning and writing and communications work. And at that point, my boss came to me and was like, have you ever thought about doing PR?
Oh.
And I knew what PR was, but it really wasn't something that I looked at for myself as a career choice. But she brought to my attention, like, everything that you are great at is what makes up a PR career. The writing, the event planning, the strategy. So she put that seed in my mind, bless her heart. And that really was like the beginning of me exploring a PR career.
Okay.
So I ended up landing a job at Burrell Communications Group, which at the time was the largest ad agency and PR agency for African-American market at the time. So that was like a big deal. Like, that ad agency kind of was like Boomerang in real life.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm sure that people listening, especially with the reboot of Boomerang on BET, like, Boomerang was that film that if you had any inkling or desire to work in advertising, like, that film kind of solidified it.
Right.
So to get up and go to work every day with all of these beautiful Black people, the company was owned by a Black man, Tom Burrell, who was well respected in the industry. And to work on programs that were for us and by us, I just took so much pride in my work. Like, it was Black excellence personified. And at that time, that's when I realized that I wanted my career to be dedicated to, servicing the Black community.
Okay.
So I worked there for some years.
How long were you there?
I did a couple of stints there. I worked there for almost 2 years in the beginning, and then I thought that I needed to get some general market experience just so that I wouldn't be, I guess, pigeonholed if I wanted to step out and do something else.
Right.
So I worked at a general market agency, didn't even last there a year because I realized that, my heart was really, again, in doing work for African-American consumers.
Okay.
So after going to the general market agency, went back home to Burrell, worked there for another couple of years, and then that's when I kind of got the New York City bug. I was traveling a lot to New York, and that's when I kind of got introduced to Brooklyn and just really fell in love with this borough. And I was like, okay, you know what? Chicago is great. I love my job, but I really want to explore New York City and see what this city has to offer, a young Black woman doing PR.
So you moved
This
to
part of the story
right,
because this is when we met.
right. This is where I came in the
So,
picture.
yes, this is where Kelsey Cooper infiltrated my life. So I moved here in 2001, right after 9/11.
I know, right?
A lot of my Yeah, a lot of my friends and family were just like, wait, you still want to move to New York? And I was like, absolutely. Like, I'm not going to let, this situation, although it was huge, stop me from making, this big decision in my life. Because in my mind, things can happen anywhere in this country. So I didn't want New York to be that dream that I never fulfilled, right?
Right.
So moved here in 2001. I was working for Lifetime Television as a senior publicist. Stayed there a little bit over a year. I got some really great television experience. Did some more work, like freelance work. I worked with Crunch Fitness, doing PR for them, and just really kind of like explored the PR industry in New York City. And then I got a job with a really big global agency here called Edelman, and I worked on the multicultural team. Loved that work, but I started to get the entrepreneurial bug. Which
what
if you live in New York City,
what inspired that entrepreneurial bug? I mean,
well, it's a couple things. First of all, when you live in Brooklyn, so many people are artists and like self-made. So to be in Brooklyn at that time, I was literally surrounded by more entrepreneurs and artists than I had ever been in my entire life.
Right. I remember we were hanging tight around then. I mean, I remember us hanging out during the week, going to parties, supporting our friends, just kicking it like, young, fresh and green, without a care in the world. And plus it was right after 9/11. So I don't think anybody was going to the city. So everything was happening in Brooklyn for the most part.
Brooklyn.
And that was dope. I mean, I had the same reaction when I was telling my friends I was moving to New York after 9/11, and they asked me the same question. Why, dude? Like, everyone is leaving New York.
Like, why would you do that yourself?
Right. So you got the entrepreneurial bug by just being in Brooklyn, being around a lot of creatives and everyone doing your own thing. And so you was working at, what's that job? What's that place you say you work?
Edelman, Edelman Worldwide.
Oh.
The entrepreneurial bug also, sorry to cut you off, the entrepreneurial bug for me was also hereditary, so to speak, because my dad is an entrepreneur, and my grandfather was an entrepreneur. And I grew up, seeing how these men were providing for their families and providing for themselves, and creating opportunities for themselves. So I saw it as a viable career option very early on. Like when I was, literally a little girl, my grandfather had a business in Indiana. And even now to this day, my dad is an entrepreneur. So it was a combination of New York City and then also, seeing what was possible through my dad and my grandfather.
Right. So when you told them that you were quitting your job to be an entrepreneur, did they support you all the way?
Absolutely. My dad, like if there was a ledge to be, to jump from or to be pushed off of, my dad was the one who was like literally behind me, like, you can do it.
Wow.
I know you. You're not going to be happy until you're working for yourself. Because when I was working in the last PR agency that I was with, I was doing a lot of PR for pharmaceutical brands.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you know anything about how that world works, it's depressing because
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally writing press releases every day about illnesses that index high in the Black community, and then pushing these drugs, prescription drugs, into my community that, a lot of people may not be able to afford, that not even be necessary. I mean, I have my own thoughts about the pharmaceutical industry, but working on a lot of those accounts is literally what helped me to
Make that
decide that it was
decision.
time. Yeah, it was time for me to have a little more control over the types of accounts I was working with and types of brands that I was servicing.
Right.
So yeah, my family was really supportive. My dad was really supportive. My mother is a Trinidadian woman.
West
So we
Indian
already
woman.
know, yeah, Caribbean mamas aren't having it. She believes in me and believed in me then, but would much rather, see me in a quote unquote good job,
Oh,
getting the
yeah. Oh,
same
yeah.
paycheck every 2 weeks. Yeah.
So your
Is
father
that
was supporting you,
401k?
and your mother was like, "Why are you quitting your job for?" I try to do that
To
accent.
this day, she really doesn't even understand what I do.
Oh
Like
wow,
she,
but
like she
but
gets it, but like she doesn't get it.
but you know what? I mean, I'm every time one of your events, she's always there holding you down.
She is always there
So
in the
that's
front
dope.
row.
So it's good to have
Mhm.
like your family supporting you, because a lot of families. I mean, when I told my moms I was quitting my job to follow my passion, they were like, "Why? You have making good money, you got good health care. You quitting that for what?"
Right.
Even
Right.
today when she called me, she was like, "Okay, making any money today?" My
Mhm.
parents are Jamaican, so I'm Jamaican. So, with that
Yes.
accent, it's like, "Oh, okay. Any checks today?" It's all about money, you know?
Ex- Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. That's what it's about. So it was interesting to have those two different perspectives from my parents. I'm glad it wasn't both of them that were, worried about their daughter being an entrepreneur, but
Right.
I think I would have done it anyway because, it's your life and you have to get up every day and face the world and, do the work. And if you're not enjoying it, then it's just like, what's the purpose? Like we spend
Exactly.
more of our time working than anything else in this life.
Right.
So by all means, you should enjoy what you're doing.
Okay. So you decided to take that leap. Did you like game plan? Did you have a plan together? Did you have any clients out, waiting for you? Or how did you eventually take that leap of faith and like, I'm ready to do this?
So I did it very strategically. When I was working at the PR agency, I was moonlighting too.
Okay.
And I had one client that I was working with, in the evenings. I would work from, at the agency from 9 to 5 or 7 or 8 or whatever that job required that day. Then I would come back to Brooklyn and, eat and then start working on, projects for my own clients.
Right.
So I had one client, then I got another client, and then, there were opportunities to work with other brands. And after a while, I just looked up at, the workload and I realized, sat down and crunched some numbers and I was like, girl, this is a good time to take the leap. Like,
Okay.
there's no better time than now because your supplemental income or your side hustle income is in a place where you can support yourself.
Okay.
And luckily, I was able to leave that job with, clientele built in as opposed to, leaving and starting from nothing. I mean, and so that's the thing. I'm very pro entrepreneurship if it is what you want to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think not even I think, we live in a time where entrepreneurship is, glamorized and you look at Instagram and all you see is people winning, winning, winning. And there's this very false perception of, there's this thought that it's easy.
It's
And
not.
it's
It's
not easy.
the
And as you know, it's
hardest. It's the hardest thing I've
the
done.
hardest thing you'll ever do.
Right.
Like, to literally get up every day and know that you're only going to eat what you kill. That's
Right.
a lot of pressure mentally, physically, there's a psychological cost to entrepreneurship that a lot of people don't even think about. And in this day of social media where you're only seeing people's highlight reels, there's this false perception of, glam and ease that comes with this life that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
So I forgot where I was going with that point. Where was I going with that,
basically,
Kelsey?
you were talking about in terms of, how much energy and it takes for you to go, to be an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
I asked you, how did you do it? Did you strategically plan to do it? And you were walking me through the strategy in terms of how you were able to take that leap.
Yeah. So I remember where I was going with that. The point that I was making, I planned out my exit, from corporate America. And I think that in this day of social media and the glamorous look of entrepreneurship, a lot of people think you just wake up one day and you're like, F it, and you tell your boss, I'm out of here. And, you slam the door and you never look back.
Right.
It's not that easy. And you really need to plan that out. Like, you really need to plan it out. It would be nice if you had a few months of your living expenses saved up. For some people, that's not realistic.
Right.
But I do tell people that as much as I'm pro entrepreneurship, I also want us to be smart. And I also want us to make sound decisions financially when we decide to get into it, because it literally is like, it has all of these ebbs and flows and, mountains and peaks and valleys, and you really can't mentally prepare for it. But if you can financially prepare for it, it will make your road a lot easier.
Right. So you were very strategic. You had a few clients, starting out. So how did you feel when you finally took that leap? And you said it was the hardest thing you ever, did. How, was it a lot more work? How did it affect your social life? How did it affect your life in general in terms of now that you're free doing your own thing and, now you got to like eat what you kill and so forth?
Well, you know how they say you work harder as an entrepreneur than you would for anyone else? I learned that very early on, because it's like a baby almost. Like,
right.
You're raising this child, so to speak, and you want to pour as much time and love and energy into it so that it can be healthy, so that it could be, all of these wonderful things. So
right.
I immediately dove into it. I had workaholic tendencies before, but they were
right.
amplified when I started, doing my own thing. And then shortly after, like literally not even a full year after launching my PR consultancy, I launched the blog, which was kind of like adding another job to my plate, because, you're creating content, you're interviewing people, and you're, attending events and things like that to get more content. So,
let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk
Yeah,
about the blog thing. What inspired you? I mean, this is in her shoes, correct? In her shoes blog. So what inspired you to, first of all, you're already a full-time entrepreneur. Now you're going to start a blog from scratch. What motivated you to like, okay, this is something else I want to do? Clearly you're a passionate person. You follow your passion a lot, but what inspired that passion to start your blog?
Well, I started the blog because at the time, and I'm stressing at the time now, because things have changed in terms of the blogosphere and the type of content we're seeing. But when I launched that site in 2009, there weren't really many places for everyday women to be celebrated. That was at the time.
That is true.
We were
that is true.
Yeah, we were at the height of like celebrity culture. Everyday women weren't getting these opportunities to be interviewed with, the bigger media outlets like maybe at Essence.com. It was really just about celebrity.
Right.
And because of the amazing women that I was meeting in New York City, like even our girl, with Pieces, like
Right.
Pieces Boutique and Letitia Daring, like she was one of my first examples of entrepreneurship in Black women here in Brooklyn, and I just loved what she was doing. And she was one of the first people that I interviewed actually. I just wanted to create a place online for us to tell our stories and to share, the challenges, the obstacles we were facing, the wins, the mistakes we were making, the lessons that we were learning, and just how we were building these brands.
Right.
And that
Letitia
was
was
the
ahead of her
inspiration
time.
behind it.
Letitia was ahead of her
Hmm.
time. We went to junior high school together.
I love it. And I love that she is like a multi passionate entrepreneur. And now she has her restaurant, Greedy Vegan. Like she's constantly reinventing herself. And I'm totally here for it.
Yeah, she's so dope. So dope.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. So you started this blog, and how did you like get traction for the blog? How did you get your followers up? How did it go out the gate? In terms of when you start something from scratch in her shoes.
Well, it was very organic, the same way that you are reaching out to your community of people, who happen to be doing great work and talking to them for Reverse Ambition. I did
Right.
the same thing for In Her Shoes. Like I literally reached out to women that I know and that, I could vouch for,
Okay.
and I started interviewing them. And this was before the time of like Instagram and, Facebook. Like I had just got on Facebook the same year that I launched the blog. And then I think Twitter was next. So, we didn't have access to, hundreds and thousands and millions of people at our fingertips back then the way that we do now. Like, if you think about it, those years that we were hanging out, we had each other's undivided attention because we were
Right.
not on Instagram. We
I
were
miss
not
those
on
days, by the
Twitter.
way. I really miss those
I
days.
miss those days so much. Like, I know I sound like Auntie Renae, but I miss those days. Like as much as, social media is a tool and it's been a huge blessing for my business and, even for my clients' brands, I genuinely miss just reaching people, and actually spending real time with people.
Right.
Now I think there's this false sense of connection because we're seeing people's pictures all day as we scroll through our phones, but we're not really reaching out and touching each other in real life as much. And that kind of makes me sad
It is.
because
It is sad. It's
in the
very
day of
sad.
social media, people are lonelier now than they've ever been because people are living such isolated lives.
Right, right, right. I mean, I also miss like the beginning stages of like social media, like Twitter. Everybody on Twitter was so like the people that you connected with on Twitter was like people or
Yes.
someone in your circle, but you may not know directly. It was such a great way to organically connect with them. And like the
Mhm.
energy on Twitter, that was around '09. It was like so freaking dope. So I miss that as
Mhm.
well. All right,
Yeah,
so
everybody wasn't building a brand,
right,
and there's nothing wrong with that. But like literally now, most people have an agenda, and most of their content is supporting that agenda. And it's no longer like Instagram is no longer Insta. Everything is super curated. Everything is a photo shoot, and it's like we don't get to see, I think, the authentic sides
right,
that we saw before in the
right.
earlier days of social.
Side note, how you think we could bring that back? By the way, this is side note. I mean, I'm just,
I
just
don't know. I think we're too far into this.
something that we're just gonna have to accept, right, and just move forward and continue. It's part of our everyday lives now. It's the way we.
Yeah, and I think it's up to us to make a concerted effort to take things offline,
Mm,
like just really connect with people in real life and not let social media be, you know, the beginning and the end of how you connect with your friends throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout the year.
right. So, um, So you got your business going, your PR business, and you got your blog going. How many clients were you managing? On average, do you manage? Um,
You know what? I kept it manageable because I've, for the most part, always been a solopreneur. It's not
mhm.
like I built out this team of people to help me, service a client. So on an average, I would say at the height of the PR work I was doing, I probably was only working with like 3 or 4 brands at a time.
Okay.
And I would make sure that there was like, a couple of bread and butter clients and then clients that had, like smaller projects that they wanted me to manage, like smaller retainers. Because even with the PR work that I was doing, I enjoyed it quite a bit, but the blog was also a job too. And I had to treat that like a client as well.
Right, right. So you had to balance both because the blog wasn't paying
hmm
you out the gate, but your
No.
clients were. Did are there times where that was conflicting? Like you neglected your client for your blog and so forth.
Um, no, if there was anything that was neglected, it was the blog because let's be real, the blog was not monetized
Right.
at that point, and New
Mm-hmm.
York City is not cheap. So, I had to be smart about where I was devoting my time and attention. And that was also a time like that was like at the height of, I mean, blogging is still relevant, but I think we're seeing a change in even how bloggers are sharing content because
Right.
we're sharing so much on social media. So,
Right.
there was a time when I was posting, once a day or even maybe twice a day on In Her Shoes. But I get it because I also wasn't sharing so much on social media.
Right.
So now that, Instagram, for example, is kind of like a micro blog for a lot of people, you'll notice that a lot of bloggers, if you go to their site, unless it's an online magazine format, if it's
Mm-hmm.
just a blog, they're not posting there as frequently because they're doing, um, sharing so much content and having so much engagement on social media.
Right. Right. All right, cool. So, left your job to start a PR firm. You manage about 3 or 4 clients. You said.
Mhm.
Then you have your blog that you're also passionate about, focusing on female entrepreneurs, which weren't
Yes.
being focused on at the time. So you basically was a pioneer in that area, right?
Yeah, I would say I was an early adapter.
Early
Like,
adapter. That's a better word. That's a better word.
yeah, I mean, Black Girl Magic is a movement, but we're seeing so much of it right now. And,
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of platforms and even a lot of brands celebrating Black women entrepreneurs. But I could genuinely say that I've always been passionate about Black women, always been passionate about Black women building brands and legacies and creating generational wealth.
Why black women
So,
though? Why are you discriminating? What about black men?
now you know good and well that I had In His Shoes too, and every once in a while I would talk about what the fellas were up to. But I think that for me, focusing on Black women was just a natural thing to do
Right.
because I didn't feel like we were getting enough shine.
Mm,
Like obviously the landscape is a lot different now, but in 2009, like I was feeling a void at
right.
that point, which I
Right.
think is the formula for anyone who's creating something. You're feeling a void or you're creating what you think is missing.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about black women. You did an amazing film called
Yes.
called She Did That. You know,
Yes.
what inspired you to say, okay, I've done a blog, I do PR, now I'm gonna create and executive produce a film about female entrepreneurs. What?
Well, that was an easy transition too because, I've always been a storyteller. So
Mm,
PR is essentially telling a brand story. And I was working with a lot of Black women owned brands. So, there's that. And then the blog, I'm storytelling through, interviews and the content that I was creating for Black women entrepreneurs. And so in 2015, I did a photography exhibition with my friend Alzo Slade.
Mm-hmm.
We went around New York City and we photographed 25 women in their element, like
Mm-hmm.
where they create their magic and where they just do their thing. And so after that photography exhibition, everybody loved it. And it was a great way to kind of tell these women's stories through photographs. But when I left that event, I'll never forget, like I hadn't even taken my heels off yet. And this one was like, so what's next? And I'm
Right.
like, whoo, sis, like I haven't even walked out of the venue
So people
for this
wanted more.
event.
It was so dope. People wanted more.
Yes, yes. And her very question of like what's next was the fuel for me really thinking about like, okay, what is next? Like
Mm-hmm.
you've been doing panel events, how many panel events can you do? You did this photography exhibition. Like, are you going to do that again? Like, what's next? And so I prayed on it, I meditated on it, and God literally planted the seed for me to continue telling these Black women's stories, but through film and,
Right.
through a new medium.
Right.
So I decided that I would create a documentary.
Right. So okay, you have an idea, which is very ambitious, by the way. So walk me through
Yeah.
how the hell you take this idea to actually, what we see now, which is amazing. How did
Well, what
you?
I would
What did you
say,
start? Where did you
I,
start?
yeah, well, let me start with the fact that ignorance is bliss.
It's
when
very blessed.
I Yeah, when I decided to, do a film, I had no clue how much it entailed. Shout out to all the filmmakers. Like, it is such an endeavor. Like, it's so expensive, and in terms of like the technical parts of storytelling and filmmaking, that was uncharted territory for me. I knew how I wanted to tell these stories. I knew, the topics that I wanted to touch on because I'd been interviewing Black women entrepreneurs for, some time. I knew, the kind of women that I needed to have in the film and the diversity of their backgrounds and ages and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to bring on a team to help me bring it to life because, this was not my area of expertise.
Right.
So, had a little bit of a rough start in terms of getting the team together. It's
How were you
that
able
old
to put the
saying.
team together? Did you rely on
Well, I mean,
relationships? Did you?
just relationships. Once I started telling people that I was, creating this documentary, they would recommend someone,
Okay.
like for the different roles. There were a couple people on board who weren't necessarily the perfect fit for the project, but they definitely served a purpose while they were there.
Right.
Everybody has a season, and just like the old saying goes, like who you start with may not be who you finish with, but the people that were on the team when they were on the team, they definitely added a lot of value to the project.
Right.
So built a team, ended up, creating a really solid team of people who, were coming to the table with years of excellent and just dope filmmaking experience and also a passion for sharing these Black women's stories.
Okay. Key word is passion. Everyone was passionate about the project, and
Yes.
that's what propelled things forward. So I'm sure you had a lot of learning experiences. Anything you want to share, or in terms of getting the film to the finish line.
Well, there's so many things. I mean, for one, with filmmaking, particularly, it was a big thing. And it's interesting because it's one of the topics that we cover in the film, which is the funding gap for Black women-owned businesses. We
Mm-hmm.
are not getting the money that our white female counterparts are getting, and we are absolutely not getting even a fraction of the money that white men are getting. So
Right.
even with this film, the financing piece of it was a challenge. And as the executive producer, it was my job
To find that
to
money.
secure the bag.
Right.
Yes. And so thank God for Black women, and thank God for the relationships that I had from doing PR, because I knew how to put together this package and pitch this concept to brands for them to want to align with and invest in it. So I was able to get some brands on board. Essence Magazine was the very first brand
Oh, that's dope.
on board to invest in the film.
Essence
General Motors
invested in the film?
Yes, yes. They made an investment in the film. They are the official media partner for the film.
Okay.
And they have a voice in the film. They share a lot of really powerful stats from their Women in the Workplace survey.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of give some perspective in terms of numbers. You know, it's one thing to hear these entrepreneurs talk about the, obstacles that they're facing, but it's another thing to see stats that support what these women are saying.
Mm-hmm.
So Essence was really dope and helpful in that way. General Motors is the official automotive partner for the film, so they were an investor in the film. Raffaella, which is a fashion brand, is an investor in the film. But, the big learning for me as a new filmmaker is that if you think your is one amount, you might want to go ahead and double that, because there are always going to be some new expenses and unexpected expenses, and things that you might have to go and over, and that's a cost in itself. So there are a lot of lessons learned in terms of budgeting for the film, in terms of timing. But I think the biggest lesson that I learned on this journey, Cal, was the fact that things seem to be falling apart, really coming together.
Okay.
And
Say that
that's
again.
why
You kind of blocked out a little bit. Are you moving around?
no, I'm not.
Okay.
I said the biggest lesson that I got was that when things are falling apart, they're really coming together.
I'm glad I had asked you to repeat that. That would have been a missed
Yes,
message.
like that was a lesson that I kept getting repeatedly throughout this entire project, because, as the creator of the film, you visualize how you want the story to be told. You kind of see the vision for it, but once the camera's rolling, it's going to end up being something else. Or
right.
Depending on someone's availability, they may secure a date with you to film, but then at the last minute, they're not available. And so you have to pivot and do something else that may end up being better than what you thought you were doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was a life lesson for me, as someone whose entire career has been built on, planning and strategy for brands. You had a little more control over how it unfolded, but with filmmaking, you may have the whole recipe, but you don't know how it's going to look and taste in the end. You know what I mean? Like, once you put all the pieces together, you put everything in that pot, you don't know what you're going to end up with.
Right.
And you just have to make it something amazing.
Right.
So that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned, and continue to learn even now that we are, finished. I continue to get that lesson. And so I always say to people that, like, this making for me has been the thing in my, like, the hardest thing I've ever done in my career, and definitely the most challenging, and but it has stretched me more as a person and as a professional than anything else I've ever done.
Okay. That's dope. All right. I mean, listen, you just dropped some amazing gems. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that. Keeps me from asking the questions. You already, offering the information. So now that you a PR professional, amazing blogger, you a brand now. You got this amazing film, In Her Shoes film. I mean, excuse me. Sorry. She did that film. I'm getting her blog and her film mixed up. She's doing so much. My bad. What's next for Miss Renae Bluitt as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur?
Well, you know what? I get this question a lot. And I remind myself, and I remind the people who ask me that, like, especially with this film, like, so much, like, the film was conceptualized in 2015. We started filming in 2016, and the film wasn't released until summer 2018. So that, I mean, we're talking about like over 2 years of my life, almost three, dedicated to this project.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
am,
you still very much invested in this project, by the way.
oh
Like,
my gosh, like it's my baby. Like it's my job. I have literally, um, retired, and I guess I'll use that that term, retired from PR for now,
oh wow!
because
So
my
you're focused on this film full time.
oh yeah, full time. I'm not, working with any PR clients. Every once in a while, I may take on a project, but it's like a hit it and quit it project. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like a 6 month retain or anything. And it's something that ties directly back to Black women entrepreneurs. Like it has to go back to, the overall, I guess, goal of the work that I'm doing.
Right.
So because I've invested so much in the film, financially, emotionally, time wise, and all of those things, I want to make sure that this project gets as much exposure as it can and is like fully actualized before
Mm-hmm.
I move on to what's next.
Okay.
And I think that we live in a time where we don't give ourselves permission to fully immerse ourselves into one thing. We do something, and then because we do have this pressure and people asking us what's next, we feel like we have to hurry up and jump to what's next when we may not have fully invested in and allowed what we're working on now to blossom.
Right.
So my focus now is getting distribution for this film so that it can be seen, by audiences globally.
Oh wow.
And then, yeah, and then after it's distributed, of course, there's more work there. It's going to be more promotional work. Um, Leading up to that, we've been doing screenings across the country. We just did the Pan African Film Festival in LA. We have a Women in Media Film Festival coming up here in New York later this Women's History Month. We've submitted to some other big festivals. We did Urban World and screened the film in Times Square last summer. So there's so many places that this film could go. The topic is very timely right now
Right.
because Black women entrepreneurs are making history in this country.
Y'all are
And
killing it.
there's
Y'all
so,
are killing it. I won't tip
yeah,
my
we
hat.
are.
Y'all
We
killing it.
are, and there's so many arms and legs. Like this film could be, curriculum in schools. I want to do an HBCU tour. I want to go to your alma mater, Howard, with this
HU.
film.
You know.
Yes, young girls need to see this. Young men need to see this. So, this is my this is my purpose work right now,
Mm-hmm.
and will continue to be until I feel like I've given it my all.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and beyond the film, I could totally see this being a docuseries. There's so many more stories to be told of Black women entrepreneurs, and I want to be the voice for us.
That's what's up, girl. And for the most part, you just a one man machine going right now, trying to push your passion forward.
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
So, doing all these passionate things, ambitious things, how does, what's up with your personal life? You don't have to tell me about, any date or anything, but is there a personal life with friends, boyfriends
Oh
or
my
whatever?
gosh,
I mean, the
yes.
reason why I'm asking that because we're so consumed in following our passion, something have to take the back burner. And
Right.
more than likely it's our personal life, and I want our listeners to hear how one would manage all that.
Yeah, well, I will say that my work has become like a lifestyle for me.
Mm,
So even though it is work, a lot of the events I'm doing, like the screening events and things like that, like it also has a play aspect because, my friends come out to these events and women that, I know in the community are out at these events and in the industry. So there is definitely an overlap with work and, my personal life, but
mm-hmm.
I do when I'm not traveling and when I'm not, catching up on rest, in between, I do make time for friends. Like tomorrow night, I'm going to dinner with a couple of girlfriends. One of my friends just got engaged and I wasn't there for the proposal. So we're going to do like a do-over and connect for dinner and things like that. And I think I do a decent job of having a personal life. I could probably do better, but when it's all said and done, I want to, I don't know if balance is realistic, but I want to have as much harmony in my life as possible, where there's a really nice mix of, me doing what I love professionally, but also spending time with the people that I love too.
Right, right. Okay. Any advice do you want to give to any aspiring entrepreneurs? You know, anything that.
You know what? The only piece of advice that I would give is, this would be for the person who's considering entrepreneurship. It may sound cliche, but it's literally my first and only tattoo, which is do what you love.
Mm-hmm.
Find that thing that you are so passionate about that you would do for free. And again, it sounds cliche and it sounds corny, but guess what? As an entrepreneur, there will be times when you're doing that work for free. Whether it's because, you're building something out or because your client has paid you on time. Like,
right.
There will be moments when you're doing it for free. And I think that passion for what you're doing is so important as an entrepreneur because you are going to face challenges on this journey that you've never faced before. Entrepreneurship is that thing that taps into all of your insecurities, the ones you didn't even think you had. And if you don't absolutely love the work, you will crumble ASAP. And from entrepreneurship, like,
listen, girl, I know you have to continue to reinvent yourself and evolve, and you just got to run with things sometimes, even if you don't know where it's going, it's heading.
Exactly. And you have to believe in it before anyone else does,
right?
Like, and more than anyone else does. Right. And part of believing in it is loving it.
Right. I find being an entrepreneur, even though I know a lot of people, it's also a very lonely place for me. Sometimes very lonely because I'm in my head a lot. And I'm the only one in my head with my ideas, and sometimes it's hard for me to get out of that. Get out of my head. So it's also a very lonely place as well. So you really have to be passionate about what you're doing because it's a lot of sacrifices that we make to do what we love and so forth.
Yeah, and that loneliness is real, and that's why it's so important to create your tribe, build your tribe, create your community of people who support you. You may not see them every day, but you have to have that person. I have friends that I'll be like, girl, I need some water cooler talk. And
right.
We'll call each other.
Right.
You need someone that you can bounce your ideas off of or vent with. You do spend a lot of time, especially if you're a solopreneur. You can spend days at a time alone working.
Right.
And while you enjoy it, that's really not healthy. You have to get out and socialize. But, if it's winter in New York City and it's like 30 degrees outside and snowing, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in your work for days and days and days. But you have to, make a concerted effort to get out, connect with people as much as possible, which is why, I do events when I can so that these people can realize that they're not alone.
Right.
And there's a safe space for them to come out and talk to other people about, the obstacles and the opportunities that are unique to them as entrepreneurs.
All right. Well, Ms. Renae, thank you so much for sharing your journey with me. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story, and also while sharing your story, dropping so many gems, and I think my listeners gonna really, really love, hearing your journey in terms of how you become the amazing, dynamic woman that you are, female entrepreneurial woman that you are today. So thank you so much for being on here with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And before I go, I do want to invite all of your listeners to follow the film on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, it's She Did That Film, and also on Facebook, it's She Did That Film. And then you can also follow my personal page. I share, some, just snapshots of my life as an entrepreneur and, life in Brooklyn and as I travel for the film. And my personal page is I am Renae Bluitt.
Well, I follow you on Instagram, and your page is definitely inspirational. So I would definitely recommend everyone follow I am Renae Bluitt on Instagram. And,
yes.
she, it's authentic too. That's what I love about it. It's who you are, so.
Thank you.
All right, girl. Thanks again. And thanks for being on here. I don't know what else to say, but I'm so humbled.
Thank you, Kelsey. I can't wait to hear it.
All right, girl. Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.